do this out this way. Before I start, I want to ask the 10 people that founded this organization to stand up and take a bow so we can all applaud. What an accomplishment. When I heard that, and I started thinking, this is a little bit like the Sons and Daughters of Liberty in the 1770s. A small group of people in the back room of a tavern launched a revolution that changed not just their country, but human history. And they did it on principles that we are reasserting right now as well. You remember when President Obama gave his State of the Union address 3 months ago? That's what they called it. I thought it was more like a state of denial address. He said something, it really struck me. This is a guy, Harvard law educated. He was a part-time professor at my alma mater, the University of Chicago, taught constitutional law, or so he claimed, and he looked at his teleprompter and he read to us, quoting the Constitution, that self-evident truth that all men are created equal. Now, were you all puzzled by that? That's in the Declaration of Independence, President Obama, not in the Constitution. Now, it wasn't a slip of the tongue. This was in his teleprompter. That means he reviewed it earlier and agreed with it. And his staff writers all thought that that was in the Constitution, too. The biggest and brightest, supposedly, speechwriting shop in human history. And they got that wrong. But it started me thinking, what else about our Declaration of Independence did they get wrong? And for a century, the progressive movement, and let's face it, Obama is kind of the culmination of their efforts. The progressive movement have been imposing new taxes and new regulations on us. And because we haven't revolted before now, they thought we enjoyed it. But down in that same paragraph, a little further on in the Declaration of Independence, after it starts off with the self-evident truth that all men, all human beings are created equal, that we have inalienable rights from our Creator, life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. And the purpose of government is to protect those rights. Not all governments do that well. But then it goes on and says, we won't change our governments for light and transient reasons. We will suffer abuses while they remain sufferable. That's what's been going on the last 70 years. We haven't thrown off the government for light and transient reasons. We've been suffering some pretty serious abuses while they remain sufferable. But what's going on right now is the next line. But when they become insufferable, it's not only the right but the duty of the people to rise up and alter or abolish their government to get them back on track and restoring and protecting the inalienable God-given rights we have. That's the only legitimate purpose of government. I got to tell you, what we're doing is not only destroying the society for us, it's destroying it for our kids and our grandkids. Let me introduce somebody to you. My son over there, Benjamin Eastman. When I started this race, Benjamin told me, Dad, I'm really upset about this. And we were, it's quite a time commitment for Dad to be out of the house and traveling around the state. He said, no, that's not what, go well, I don't know what. What I'm upset about, the election in November is 2 weeks before I turn 18. I won't be able to vote for it. But I told him he could work for me, and he is. And you see, I picked up in San Diego in one of their rallies just this earlier week. They're calling it Revolution 2010, and they've got T-shirts printed up. That's what's going on. But what we've done here is destroying the fiscal credibility of this nation. For the first time in our history, we are passing off a country to our kids that is worse than the one we got from our parents. That is immoral, ladies and gentlemen, and it ought not to happen in this country. And thank you for coming out to try and do something about it. Let me tell you the kind of things I'm talking about. And I'm going to get a little partisan here. Let me ask, how many declined to state people do we have in the room? Do we have any? You got to register before May 23rd, so you can vote for me on June 8th, okay? All right? You can do whatever you want to do after that, but by May 23rd. How many Democrats? Do we have any Democrats in the room? All right, you can re-register too before May 23rd.
I'm a Kennedy Democrat.
Okay, that's all right, that's all right. Jack Kennedy reminded us something that we've forgotten. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Too many people today are asking the question the other direction. What's in it for me? What can I grab from the taxpayers? Ronald Reagan once quoted an old Scottish philosopher, historian, who said, democracies fail when the people figure out they can vote to raise taxes on others to grab benefits for themselves. And ladies and gentlemen, that's what's destroying this state. We're on the verge of bankruptcy. 4 months ago, the controller of this state floated the idea about California being returned to federal territory status because the federal government can breach contracts that the states are not allowed to breach under the Constitution, and then get those contracts breached and then return us to statehood. That's how dire circumstances here are right now. And let me tell you what an attorney general who understands the Constitution can do about that. 8 years ago, the state legislature, bought and paid for by the public employee union. How many of you get to negotiate your contract, your salary terms with your boss after you put them in office? Right? How many get to pick your boss and then negotiate the terms of your contract? That's what we have with our public employee unions in the state. And I am, in favor of the kind of work they do. But let's face it, at some point, these things get so out of control that they're destroying the state. So 8 years ago, the legislature authorized a retroactive increase in pension benefits. This isn't on a going forward basis. This was retroactive. So for work you'd already done, you all of a sudden were going to get a 50% more increase in pension than you had the day before. It's costing this state $13 billion a year. A year. The Stanford report came out last week estimating that the unfunded liability from that little change is $500 billion. That's starting to be some real change, ladies and gentlemen. Think about what it's going to do to our ability to keep teachers in the classroom now. That $13 billion is going to come from someplace. Think about what it's going to do with sheriffs' ability to keep sheriffs on the ground now. That money's going to come from someplace. Now, thankfully, we don't have to repeal it through the legislature because they couldn't get there. We have a provision in our state constitution that if it was just enforced, made those contracts illegal. We've actually got 3 or 4 provisions in our state constitution that make it illegal. One, going all the way back to 1879. You can't take taxpayer money and give it to private individuals as a gift. That was a gift. That was a gift. It was a raid on the taxpayer money. In 1966, we added another provision. You can't give money increases in pay for work already done. Retroactive pensions do just that. That provision said the legislature can't authorize it. So somebody said, well, that didn't mean the county governments and the city governments can't authorize it. So we did another amendment in 1970. I think it was titled, "We Really Mean It This Time" amendment. No city, no county, no government agency, no legislature can authorize retroactive increases in pay for work already done. And yet they did it anyway in 2001. Our Attorney General right now is saying that we can ignore those provisions of the Constitution. Ladies and gentlemen, when they tell you to pick up your Constitution, the people of this country have finally had it. They said, the only authority you have in government is what we have given you. Because in this society, we recognize that it's the people that are sovereign. We don't answer to you. We don't have our rights from you. Our rights are God-given. And it's your job in government to exercise the powers we give you, not for your own purposes, but to protect the rights that we have. And when you stop doing that, we're going to come after you. We're going to throw you out of office. And we're going to put in people that will understand the constitutional limits on your power. That's what I'm running for Attorney General for. And that's what you're